I wanted to, facilitate an environment that was very student-led, very team-based. So can't have desks, like have to have tables. I really wanted project-based learning to be sort of the main modality of learning. Like I wanted it to be meaningful. And there were times where, yeah, we'd have to read a little, we'd have to research, we'd have to present, we'd have to, all the things you'd see in a classroom. But I really wanted my units to be driven by experience and projects. Like really, I always told people it's like, how you can cover material. Well, in science class, we want to uncover and discover the
Right.
material. And so creating an environment like that. So
Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How are you today, Nick?
Doing well. Yourself?
Phenomenal, especially since we have an amazing guest. Our guest today is Laura Williams, a 21st century learning specialist with the Iowa Area Education Agencies. Laura is dedicated to supporting teachers in their development of high-quality instructional projects that bring meaning and relevance to students across the state. She is the author of a great book called The Improvement Game, exploring education through passion, agility, and authentic learning experiences. Laura can also be found speaking at various conferences and institutes throughout Iowa and across the country. She is one of those rare, down-to-earth people who genuinely take joy in seeing others strive and achieve. It's a pleasure to welcome Laura Williams to State of Ed Podcast. How are you,
yeah.
Laura?
Hey, Mark. Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Can you take us through your journey as an educator?
Yes, it's a lot. Well, it's kind of I don't know, once upon a time. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I guess really this should be said, like I never really intended on necessarily going into education, but my parents were educators. My dad was a principal. My mom was a math and science teacher, and then she turned consultant. And so I was just always around it. I often joke I'm the kid picks kid. Like my mom was the OG tech integrationist, so I got to be that little kid that tried the tech and showed, look how engaged she is. And so I've always been around it. And so when I went into school, my parents, coached me like you can do whatever you want, like whatever you like, find your path. I was never really I don't feel like I was limited, so I was very privileged in that way because they always built me up. And yeah, I didn't think I'd become an educator. Went to school. I was actually a bio major at University of Iowa, pre-med. Thought I'd be like a doctor, thinking I'll go that path. Part of Iowa's curriculum, you have to volunteer at a hospital, like as part of that. Like, ooh, I don't really like this. It's very sterile. It's very clean. It's very, I don't know. I found myself in the patient's library. That was because you could pick where you wanted to be. And so I just kind of like found myself at the library, like picking out books and like doing technology, helping people with the library's computers. And so I think that was very telling of looking back. I'm like, that's pretty telling of where I was headed towards. But I ended up with the biology connection. I liked conservation and I really liked ecology. And so I ended up doing a study abroad towards the end of my undergrad in Costa Rica. Loved it. I ended up
Nice.
moving there. This is kind of wild. I was in Costa Rica for about 3 years. I ended up
Wow.
getting a teaching job at a private bilingual school because they were looking for, they wanted someone fluent in English. And so I was La Gringa and I taught science and inquiry for Gosh, I was with third graders. I was with fourth graders. I was with fifth graders. And then I had a seventh and eighth grade class and then a ninth grade class. And so I got to trial by fire and I loved it. I loved it, but I was like, I don't think I know what I'm doing because I've never been formally trained. Like I knew my experience, but I knew like I wanted it to be immersive. I wanted it to be engaging. And so, it was cool because I could experiment and like almost like empiricism, like that didn't work. Let's try this. And so, and I also learned I was a secondary teacher. I love the little ones, but my goodness, the patience, God bless the elementary and early
Amen.
learners, educators, because they are so sweet. They are on the moon sometimes. I really found joy with the seventh and eighth like that like seventh, eighth grade, middle school. I was like, I think I'm a middle school teacher. I think that's me. And went back to school, came back to States, went back to school, got my master's in teaching science ed, and was a middle school science teacher for some years, and then was doing innovative things. Got kind of noticed by the STEM council here in Iowa, and kind of got put on the map with a redesign learning. It was a grant to kind of redesign your space. And so it was kind of like the showcase, the prototype of like, what does a redesigned learning environment look like? What are kids doing in it? So kind of started speaking about it as just like, a young teacher, like passionate and showing people. And I think that got me noticed. And then the area education agencies are like, oh, you should be a consultant. You should spread this Kool-Aid farther. And so I've been working with AEAs since, gosh, I want to say 2016 was when I first got hired. And then started doing stuff, trying to help innovate and create and 21st century skills. Actually, my role was 21st century learning specialist because they didn't know what else to call me. I was the first one. And then found myself working statewide with our agency to roll out authentic learning projects with our what we call the clearinghouse for work-based learning. I don't love saying work-based learning because work doesn't sound like any kind of fun, but the the idea of just creating these really real experiences for kids to engage in, and just the passion I see in the students, like when they engage, like they know they're contributing to something bigger. That was kind of what kind of led me, what's driven me, what my book is kind of about, and wanted to share a lot of the learning the last 8 years in this box of like working with community partners and schools to try to create these experiences that really are meaningful to kids. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm doing trainings, like trying to connect people to the Kool-Aid, if you will. And yeah, it's been a fun journey. So thank you for that question. It's fun to kind of reflect on that.
It's fun to listen to it also,
Thank
the
you.
journey. Do you travel all throughout the state or do you still work from one home base?
Yeah, so I do. There's been some shuffling with the AEAs a little bit with legislation and things like that. So kind of getting used to the new parameters. But yeah, I've been like everywhere in Iowa. I feel like I'm queen of the highway, like Highway 34, Highway 35, 80, like yeah, I tell people I've been everywhere, man. Like trying to meet the schools. What's kind of neat is, and I've been fortunate these last couple of years, the schools that are ready for you and really want this kind of learning, like it's fun to be invited because they're the people that want to do it. I'm lucky that I'm not in sort of this compliance niche of
Mm.
like, you have to do this. And I get to work with the people that want to do it and are ready for it. So that's been really nice. There's been some shift. I feel like I have done a lot more virtual things. This past and a half has really gone virtual, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a mix of everything. It's kind of nice because I like that. Like I like like every day can be different. So that's really helped. I think that's helped me keep longer than 7 years. I guess we're friends for life. No, in the in the AEA system, but yeah.
You mentioned so much in your explanation of your journey from Costa Rica to today, which is really fascinating. When you redesign your classroom, let's go back to that
Okay.
moment. Like, what was your model for that? Were you just dreaming up things? Were you basing it off of things that you had seen and just putting your own spin on it? Like, what did that look like? And how did that manifest into an actual learning space?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think part of my ideas got to be embedded in that, which is really cool as like a teacher to have a voice in that. I'd say we had a lot of partnerships to look at. So looking at business and industry, what does their environments look like? I wanted to, facilitate an environment that was very student led, very team based. So can't have desks, like have to have tables. I really wanted project based learning to be sort of the main modality of learning. Not that we did, not that it was just project. Like I wanted it to be meaningful. And there were times where, yeah, we'd have to read a little, we'd have to research, we'd have to present, we'd have to, all the things you'd see in a classroom. But I really wanted my units to be driven by experience and projects. Like really, I always told people it's like, how you can cover material. Well, in science class, we want to uncover and discover the
Right.
material. And so creating an environment like that. So what is, as a true biologist, right? Like that mindset, like structure function, like if we know what the function, like we know how we want it to work, we need to have the environment that facilitates that. And so tables, whiteboards, kids can be messy and creative. We had writable desks. And I say some of these ideas, like going back to your question, like the university at the time was doing some innovative things in some of their spaces. The University of Iowa, they had this room called a tile room, like technology. I don't remember what the aisle, like something infused learning environment. I don't know, but basically, like we kind of looked at some of what they were doing at the college, and then we were thinking like Google, like what does Google environment look like what, all those things. Looking at other schools, big picture learning, like all those things that were kind of happening at the time. It was what, 2012, 2013, the same time that the Sir Ken video on changing
Yep.
educational paradigms kind of came
Yep.
out. Like that, I was thinking about that. Like that video, like that came out, that TED Talk, and like that was like when I was like really taking ownership of my, like, I'm a change agent teacher, and like that like spoke to my soul, and I wanted kids to be creative. And so like all that happening and like seeing what's going on around, trying to infuse that in the classroom. So we put up monitors on every side of the wall and had tables that like would cast, so kids could have their devices and they would cast to the monitors. Now these are middle school kids, so like imagine that kind of professional like setting. We have rollable chairs, so like they could move and like be, they're squirmy, they have energy. So that was kind of nice to have that kind of release while they're working. Sometimes it got out of control in the movement department, but we gave ourselves grace,
Of
as we built
course.
parameters and guidelines, like to how do we work in this room, in this space, because that's the learning part, that's the struggle part. So
And
yeah,
nothing works all the time.
yeah,
Nothing.
nothing. Yeah, we learned. We were like, this is kind of interesting, but yeah, it was really fun. The kids really liked it. I felt like my room was like the room they always just wanted to be in. We found creative ways to use our space during like advisory and like homeroom time, like a little bit of karaoke since we had all the tech. We also had mics, so kids could like present, and we had a sound system. So we just karaoke in there. It was really fun. It was a team of us that kind of put this together. We worked with our local AEA. This is kind of a apples don't fall far from trees moment, but my mother, her name's Dr. Lindgren. You can Google her. She's done some stuff. She was like the queen of like redesign learning environments. And so she kind of had a philosophy on that. And so our school district consulted with her as well. So yeah, it was kind of neat to like bring the worlds together and make this space.
So it's a family business, really, is
I
what you're.
guess I
Wow.
didn't mean to. I tried not to. I went to Costa Rica. I swear I tried.
He literally left
Wow.
the country to try.
I literally wanted to like find myself. Yeah, exactly.
I share a lot of that with you because my parents were both educators. My grandparents were educators. So I swore that I was never going to, I was going to do
Right?
like
Mm-mm.
law and
Be
like,
a doctor.
yeah, I mean, yeah, pre-med, law, finance, Hollywood, like anything other
Yes.
than.
I totally had a moment where I was like, I could be
Yeah,
famous. I go to
yeah,
Iowa.
of
It's
course.
too
It's
easy.
easy. It's just so easy. You just say that you want to, and then it happens. But when you were redesigning and coming up with these tables and basically tearing at the traditional framework and you chopping it up in a in a wood chipper, were there any folks who were like screaming, like, "Well, how are they going to take their assessments if there are no desks?" So like practical
Yeah.
traditional things that people were having a tough time letting go of while you were just like filling everybody's cups with the Kool-Aid. What did you come across or encounter any of that back then?
Yeah, I mean, I had a really awesome like my science department. We were pretty cool. I love creating experiences. I really am in tune with like user experience. I walk through and I empathize like what the kid is going through, what the adult is going through when I think about like unit lesson design. And so I found myself, because it was, and I have to preface with, it was the time when we just adopted the new standards. So I came in at a really good time because everyone was looking at the curriculum. Everyone was like, okay, we have to do things differently. So it wasn't like I was, in ways that was really nice because there wasn't like a target on my back for being different. It was like, no, we have to. We have new standards. So I kind of like snuck in there to be like, well, in my graduate experience, like here's this really amazing, NGSS approved bundled experience. And so I felt like my team, they didn't do everything I did. I think sometimes there was moments of, if you were in my class and not the other teacher's class, there was the kids talk, right? And
Of course.
so there was moments like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like make it seem like we were having more fun, or things like that. So I think there were moments like kind of maybe pain points, if you will, on that ripple effect of like what you're doing. But like I will say, like I think some of the things that were created during that time period, I think they were like really adopted really well by my colleagues in that case. Outside of that, there was definitely questions of like, okay, like what are we doing? I know one time, it's science class and like I'm thinking about like what can we do? And you get to like energy efficiency and like wind turbines, and that's like a big thing in Iowa. So it's really relevant. I'm thinking about units of like connecting to careers and things like that. And I remember like planning this unit and then come to find because there's like we just didn't know, but like apparently the TAG program, extended learning program, whatever your state calls it, they were doing wind turbines like as a special project when kids got pulled out, like they would be doing that. I'm like, wait a minute, like that's all kids. Like that should be for all kids. And so
That's
I
right.
was like, I'm doing this. This goes with my content and my standards. And so we all the kids got to develop and plan their wind turbines and experiment and like, it was just one of those moments of like, wait a minute, what? Like that should be learning for all, and then the extended part should be let's go deeper into the kinematics, or like let's go deeper and
Sure.
further for the kids that need it. Whereas all kids can build and create and imagine, and yeah, they'll fail, and maybe they won't quite understand like how energy works, but those are the pain points me as a teacher, like that I have to figure out, okay, well, how can I reach this kid in this way? So yeah, I think there were, to be polite, because I loved all the people I worked with over time. At times it might feel like the go-getter is moving cheese. I think that we all might feel that way. Like, oh, they're really picking up their game. So I think it like puts that stress on people if
Mhm.
someone else is doing something. But I think if we can pull back a little bit and wait a minute, like let's observe, let's learn, let's see what happens. And then maybe if it makes a really good impact, like maybe I can start adopting. And so that's how that change kind of like roots kind of happens. And so yeah, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, I think there was some moments of like, I don't know, Laura, like be careful, like you don't want to make people mad, but at the same time, I tried to really finesse it. Um, I don't think that's how you create change. I don't think you push things on people. I think you have to let them experience it and then find oh, I see the win in this. This is awesome. Let's do it this way.
Right. Everybody wants to do a great job with their kids.
Right.
Everybody
Yeah.
wants to be successful, but sometimes they just get stuck in old paradigms, and you have to give them an opportunity to see how successful they can be.
Right.
And some people will be the first to adopt, and other
Right.
people will be very, very late to the game. But hopefully, if you still, believe in it and you show, and more importantly, that the kids demonstrate their achievement and their success with it, over time, you'll get most. You don't get all typically, but you get most. And that's, in education, I think that's a realistic goal, is to get most.
But you're such an insightful commentary on, I'm assuming TAG is talented and gifted. Is that what
Yeah.
you're, right? So our district used to have that. They phased it out. But you're so right. Why are we reserving the most innovative and creative projects for only a select few
Yes.
students? Shouldn't that be the norm? I never even considered that, because when we did have talented and gifted, kids did some great work.
Yeah. And the kids that, it's funny that wind turbine one, the kids that really loved it were the ones that, some of them had IEPs and they were on fires and had behavior issues. But I tell you what, when they were doing that winter, like they went home, they brought things back in because they wanted to try it. They were excited. That right there, like if I hadn't done that, that would have been a missed opportunity. And it's unfortunate because they benefit from it just as much. And so, yeah, all kids deserve really fun, engaging experiences.
I mean, it sounds like the essence of what you're arguing is that students really need to be doing more in schools,
Yes.
which I can't tell you how, much I enjoy hearing that. In your work with all these schools, though, do you ever find that like one of the obstacles is, well, if they're only doing this in some classes and not others, that it's more difficult to get the kids to buy in? Let me make sure I just explain the question. There are some kids that are so beaten down from the fact that school is very rote memorization for them, task oriented, like, checklist things, that they'll just say to themselves, I'll just do it at home. They
Yeah.
just get so used to that. And I think you have to shift the culture of the entire school. That no, our school is going to be where all the energy is taking place, all the work is taking place, with us as your guide, as your
Yeah.
coach, as your teacher. But I'm just curious, like in the schools you have observed, are there any schools where the entire faculty is really buying in, and is the outcome a lot better?
Yeah. I think it's hard to for the teachers out there that are really innovators, those change agents trying things. I think they all can relate to the comment. It's almost like you have to reprogram them.
Right.
You have to kind of shape the culture and develop those sort of like, I don't know, like the norms of you're going to take ownership. This is really about creating, student agency and, developing those leadership skills, those durable skills, 21st century skills, whatever you want to call it. And that's hard for kids. Like when they
Right.
first are challenged to do that, when they've come from like, here's your worksheet, here's your pages, find the word and the definition and plug it into the worksheet, and that's learning. Like and I gotta say, worksheets don't always grow dendrites, right? I don't mean to like talk negative. There's a time and a place, right? Like I'm not saying don't do any of that. There's a time and a place if we're building scaffolds, or maybe we do need to work on vocabulary and things like that. But I remember like a distinct moment when I was teaching, and I remember, Miss Williams, can't we just have a worksheet? Because they were tired, and I was asking them to think and be critical
Bingo.
thinkers.
Exactly.
And it's a muscle. And I think that's what we have to remember. Critical thinking, problem solving, like those are muscles. And we have to keep doing it in order to get better at it. I was just reading a book. It's Charles Duhigg, Faster, Smarter. I don't know. I'm gonna get it wrong, but anyway, if you Google Charles Duhigg and you'll see that. Anyway, it talked about like the your locus of control, and people who believe that they can, achieve and do things, and they actually have a strong locus of control. And so you have to, in order to grow that, you have to give kids opportunities to make decisions. Again, it's a muscle. Giving them choice over and over, like giving them multiple opportunities grows that muscle, and then they get better at becoming decision makers. And I think there is some reprogramming. Have I seen schools that are starting to think about this horizontally, like systemically? Yeah, I think there are. I think there are some really innovative leaders out there. But I really do think it has to start with that leader to like clear the way, and open up. Hey, we can do this. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but it can be some or something. I think that is the mindset of the schools that are actually making progress. Again, it's drops in a bucket. This is what we're aiming for. The work is never done in education, but we have a vision for it. I think some movement and traction I've seen out there is with Portrait of a Graduate or Portrait of a Learner. Some states are kind of doing that work, and I think when you say this is what we want all kids to have, then you start to level the playing field in all classrooms, like thinking, well, if this is our litmus test of if we're doing that, then we can look at our lessons and say, ooh, we're not really like, maybe we ought to replace this with something else. And I have to replace it. Don't add to the plate. I think
Right.
we have to get in this mindset of take off the things that are not adding value and be okay with that to add the things that will. But yeah, I think we're getting there in some places. Of course, there's lots of work to do, as you know, probably in your roles and what you see. It's not a consistent thing. I mean, we're working with lots of people and lots of scenarios, and then we have to remember every single student that comes into the door is different. And so it's like the playing field changes every year. So how do we pivot? How do we support learners? And I think agility, like learner agility, teacher agility, an agile classroom, it might be a solution to that. And so that's what I've been working on a lot with schools.
But agility has to be supported from
Yeah.
upper management, right? It has to be
Yeah.
supported by administration. And that's one of the things that Nick and I are very passionate about is like supporting risk taking from teachers,
I love that.
because we don't want to go in with dogma that's been, quote unquote, like educational paradigms for the last century. Can we check off all the boxes that you have everything that you were supposed to have over the last 100 years in, quote unquote, teaching a lesson in
Yeah.
this lesson, as opposed to
Yeah.
what Nick and I are trying to do, which is like, are students engaged in what you're attempting to teach them? Are they thinking? Are they active? Are they actively participating? And is everybody having a good time working? Not playing necessarily. Like work can be
Right.
through play, but like, is everybody engaged and achieving at the highest level that they can at this given moment in their journey as a learner? And are you giving all that you can give? And are you as creative and as innovative as you can be at your particular point in your journey as a teacher, understanding that there is no mountaintop that you attain?
Right.
which is sort of like tenure kind of creates, many states have tenure. It kind of creates this false perception that that is the mountaintop. Like you've worked 3 or 4 years and now you have basically done it. And like 3 or 4 years in, you haven't really done much other than just get tenure. Like you're just starting to learn about what your true capabilities can be. So we don't want people to like plateau there, and leaders as well. Like if your third or fourth year as a building leader or as a central leader or whatever it is, like you're just learning also. Can you keep innovating? So one of the things that I love hearing you say is really just how this focus for you is so authentically around the student engagement process,
Yeah.
because it means everything, especially today, because students have more options than they've ever had in the history of time. And we're competing with that every single day. This maybe is a great opportunity to kind of talk about your book, The Improvement Game, because it kind of like lends itself to all the different things that I've been just mentioning in the last minute. So can you just tell us a little bit about The Improvement Game and what is the message there for educators in terms of how to level up and how to keep their students engaged in class?
I think a lot of what you kind of just talked about is it really kind of goes back to motivation and to see the value in what we do. And so I would question if you're not feeling motivated, whether you're a teacher or a student or an administrator, we've got to start asking ourselves, well, where's the value? Because that's where the buy-in is. And so I think the improvement game is a great place to get started because I kind of walk through in ways I walk through my journey as a learner in this kind of context of shift. Oops, I've stepped in shift. That's my like I'm gonna trademark that. Like oops, I've stepped in shift.
That's great.
The this idea that start with this we're humanity, right? We are all human and no matter where you are at in your life, you can improve. It doesn't matter. You have to pick what you're passionate about and focus on that, but anybody can improve. If you feel static or not motivated, then you really need to examine what is your vision for yourself? What is your vision for your classroom? What is your vision? How can we inspire vision in our students? I think that when you can inspire a vision for students, whether it's on a project or a community, outreach, get wildly excited about that, then you've got them. I think motivation is it's like that intrinsic. How do we tap into that? Like we know, we've, pre-service teacher, we've learned about psychology and how we can like hook people, but are we doing it? And if we're not, what could we shift or how could we look at this differently to do that? And so I think the improvement game kind of walks through this idea that we're all on a path and what is our passion and how do we harness that passion to be productive, to change the game. I often say change trajectories. As teachers, I don't think there's a teacher on this planet that doesn't want to change a trajectory in the right direction, but it's got to be kind of like we all have to be kind of all in on that. One of the stories I talk about in the book is, there was I had, so as a middle school teacher, I had some of my first year, I had some of the naughtiest kids. And I was told this, like, that class period is just packed with some characters, right? And that actually was like game on. Like, I'm ready. Like, let's do this. Love those kids. And they were naughty and sometimes they were mean, but I tried to be patient with them and I tried to inspire them. And it's funny because I reflect back and it's like everybody knew and they said, oh, those kids are going to go to the alternative ed. They already knew in like sixth grade these kids' trajectories. And guess what? This was years ago. They weren't wrong. And I'm just so sick of like, okay, if we know that, then why aren't we doing something different?
Right.
Those kids need mentors. They don't need worksheets. I feel like if we have 6.5 instructional hours a day, my gosh, we can be using those, we can be adding value. So I think that's really at the heart of it, it's the passion of really making an impact for kids. But then I wanted to go, it's one thing to want that and talk about it and be philosophical. I have found in my journey some solutions to really help engage and help teachers. And that is through agile project management. I took some project management courses, workshops a while back, and I thought, this is the missing ingredient. I wanted to be PBL, like collaborate kids, but I never really built the infrastructure to help grow and develop collaboration. I never really modeled it. I just kind of put kids into what I would call a group, and I said, this is the objective, good luck. Like that's what I did, and like let them struggle and help them in real time. Not that that's bad, but we could be better, improvement. So I found a framework called Scrum. So Google that if you're listening. I became a Scrum bum. In 2018, I took the class, and it's just changed the way I view everything ever since.
What is that?
So yeah, so Scrum is a it's kind of a
I
project
know it in the
management.
rugby sense, but not in the
Yeah,
education sense.
I mean, it comes from Scrum, so they're like in the huddle, and then they move the ball forward. It's kind of the same concept, but with teams. You have this cross-functional team with multi-strength, multi dispositions, and just like kids in a classroom, they're on a team and they have this objective and they're trying to move the ball down the field. And so it kind of gives you this framework, think of learning sprints. So it kind of goes back to this sprint. So you build in a time box. So time boxing is big. You build in a time box to plan. And in the book, I like create some resources to help the planning. So you plan what you're going to do. This can be teacher directed or student led. So I could give you ideas for your plan, and maybe there's a choice board involved, or maybe you're actually totally student driven. And we have this project we're working on. We're going to set the plan. You time box. Think of a sprint as like a week. So Monday you plan, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're doing the work. And while you're doing it, the teacher is doing, or it could be student-led check-ins where you ask, what'd you do yesterday? What are you working on today? And what are your impediments or roadblocks to success? This keeps the work visible, accountable. You use a Scrum board. I wish I could pull mine. I don't know. I have like right now I have this going on, like this little like for me, this is like I have taxes on here, like the things I need to get done. But like to do, doing, and done. It's just a task board. And so the kids are working on their tasks. It's very visible. The teacher knows exactly where they're at. They can see, oh, Susie, why, this sticky has been in this to doing for a while. Do you have any impediments? What can I help you with? The teacher really becomes the guide on the side, that facilitator. And then so the teacher is doing the check-ins as students are working. You get to Friday, you build in, and this is where it's a secret sauce of improvement, I think. You build in this thing called a review and then a retrospective. The review, so time box time to look at the work they've done and give feedback, meaningful feedback, not points. We're not chasing points in this environment. We're actually trying to improve our product. So we get feedback. If there's feedback that can improve it that we want to roll with, that goes back onto the backlog of like, okay, we're going to do this next sprint. We're going to work on this piece. The retrospective is about the learner. It's about the work of the team, and they retrospect on the processes in place. I really liked when we did it this way. Or, oh, actually it was kind of a pain point when you started working on this and I didn't know. And then I started recreate. So it gives them sort of an outlet to talk about what went buggy, which we know in school, things are buggy. There's conflict. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on. But building in some guardrails to have a conversation about it is incredibly helpful. And I would say the retrospective has been my game changer as an educator and just as like a person working with other people. So the book really has a lot of templates to facilitate those conversations towards improvement for the learner. And there's a lot of other good, I would say over 100 different like resources in there, and they're all free. They're in a Google Drive. I'll probably give you guys the link as you promote and stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of it deals with holistically project management, team management, and then developing a strong team, and then really bringing in that authentic approach to projects. And giving teachers some guardrails to like help facilitate and become leaders, project managers, and support their students as they work through it. And then kids are developing those critical skills as sort of it's kind of the vehicle for it. Like the team is the vehicle to really develop it, and the project.
It's so exciting to listen to your work. It really is phenomenal. In your role now, do you work more with administrators or with teachers?
Oh, both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, I think both. This last semester, I had a chance to work with a whole school district. So I worked with the leadership team to build out the professional learning. The teachers got really immersed in an authentic project. We learned about Scrum and sprints and things like that. And so I got to work with small groups of teachers in that, and it was really great.
That's
So
great.
I'd say I'm ready to talk to anybody and again, it's that user. You have to think through the user experience of like even professional learning. like what is the goals, what is the benefit, and then how do we know we're successful is kind of the frame. It's kind of the agile mindset of like making things visible to all the stakeholders. And so yeah, I'm excited to work with anybody in education to think through this.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because one of the things that I try to talk about especially when I'm trying to mentor new teachers, is that when you're in the planning process, don't just think about what your needs are, but like literally go back and forth from the perspective of the student sitting in the chair and what you need as well. And that will also help you address like, is this going to be interesting or compelling for them? As
Right,
opposed to, does this satisfy the content that I need to cover so they have what they need to take an assessment at some point later in the year?
right,
You have to be able to strike that balance because very often it doesn't work that way. It's basically the teachers thinking about what they need to accomplish, which of course is important. But
right.
if you just keep going and they're not on the train, well, the train can get to the destination on time, but like it doesn't have any passengers in it. So like, have you accomplished anything?
Well, there's a quote from if it's a TED Talk. I forget the name, but it's skateboarding can save our schools. If you Google TED Talk, skateboarding can save our schools. And the speaker, I think he's like a physicist. I don't know. He said that nobody knows how long it takes anybody to learn anything. And if you really think
Love
about
that.
that, it's like, oh my goodness, like you might think you're moving this train and you're covering your bases, but like by golly, we've left some kids back at the first stop. You know what I mean? And so how do we in real time do the just in time learning, make sure we don't leave people behind? And ultimately, I think that thread that kind of pulls them along is that motivation and that buy-in of like,
Right.
this is exciting, I want to be a part of it.
Right. And part of what you're describing is really like the salesmanship of teaching because
Yeah.
you are
Yeah, actually.
right.
Yeah.
If you sell cars, people are coming onto the lot. You have a pretty good idea that they want to buy a car because they could have been on their couch, but they're not. So
Right.
you already have an advantage. But when a student comes into a classroom, they don't necessarily want to learn anything. They have to be there. So you then have to think about how you're going to sell and make what you're teaching as interesting as it can possibly be. And you can't just trust that what drew you to the subject and what fascinates you about the subject will just innately fascinate someone else. You have to
Right.
find it and you have to bring it to the forefront of what you're doing and sell it. And there's performance art and sales involved with great teaching, and I think that's an important lesson that shouldn't be overlooked.
That's really true. Like it's almost like marketing. Like how do we convey and articulate to kids in a way that they'll receive it, that they say, "Oh, I see myself in that and I want to get involved." Yeah.
I mean, the pushback that teachers will give usually will be like, what's on the assessment at the end?
Yeah.
And until the assessments change, the work that people like you guys are doing is just going to be a little bit more challenging to get everybody on board. Even
Right.
though even though you're right. Yeah.
Right.
But my argument would always be to them, you can still get them to do well on the assessment and incorporate learning that's going to be engaging and having kids produce versus just recite information. Because really, at the end, what's so good about them doing well on the assessment if they're just going to forget all that information anyway?
Right. And
But
they do. Like
they
they do.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas they're not going to forget the project that's going to help them, when they get into the real world, to have the skills to collaborate with others and to think critically. Those skills don't go away. Like you already gave Mark his like YouTube short because
Oh.
the comment about muscle building and how we
Oh.
have to, because it really, it's brilliant and it's so true. There's so many kids that would rather just sit in class. All right, I'll just copy notes because it's mindless.
Right.
They can think about other things. They can look at their phone. They can do whatever they want. But when you're really challenging them to think, they
Yes.
can't scroll through TikTok because the brain doesn't work that way.
Right. Yep.
And they've also been trained to earn points,
Yeah.
Right.
participation points, by
Yeah.
copying on time or filling out the worksheet. So they're falling back to their muscle memory, which is, okay, this is how I show compliance. But that's
Right.
not really engagement. It's just
Right.
compliance and nothing else.
Right. And doing that isn't even going to guarantee a good grade on the test. Because are you really internalizing it? Is it really visceral when you do it that way? I don't think so. I don't learn like that. And that took me time to understand. Like I thought, wow, I don't really understand this. And then I get a bad, like if I got a bad grade, like I didn't really understand it. And I think kids often, and especially the kids that they fail, then you're just they're done because why would you try if in that context and that's the only context and if empiricism every time I push that button I fail, you're going to quit pushing that button, you're going to quit trying. So yeah, I think that's interesting to think about it like that, like it's rote and it's not effective.
And there are well-intentioned educators who, when faced with that kind of obstacle and challenge, which just about every one of us is faced with it, at one time or another, we try in earnest to give them like shortcuts. Like, okay, here's all you need to remember. Just to remember like this, or here's an acronym, or here's a song, or here's a whatever it is. And because we're just trying to get them over that little hump, which is a
Right.
short-term pain point that you've been, phrase that you've been using throughout. But again, it doesn't result in any kind of understanding. It just results in satisfying a very short-term goal, which is can you find the right multiple choice answer
You the right answer. Yeah.
on the
Roy G.
test?
Biv. Like I was just thinking acronyms. Roy G. Biv. Like I remember that. Like Roy G.
Right,
Biv. But like, does it really? What does that matter if you know the color? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
is it about the? Maybe it goes deeper, like the wavelengths and understanding, or like communication and solving a problem, or inventing something, or like what does it matter? We have to make it matter, or and if it doesn't, this is going to be hot take. If you find yourself saying this matters nowhere, why are we doing this? And
That's right.
even
And there used to be a time when, maybe you could argue you needed to remember Roy G. Biv because how else would you
I
know?
love Roach. Like, let's be honest. Like, that's cool. Rainbow. Like,
Well,
I
it's
don't.
it's it's
Like,
a
let's not pick on that. But yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah.
it's a classic. I got it. But the point is, there was a time when you didn't necessarily have access to that information. So if you didn't have these mnemonic devices, you wouldn't be able to know them moving
Right.
forward. But now you literally have access to everything at your fingertips. So like that kind
Right.
of knowledge and memorization has, I won't say no value, but minimal value just because of the technology that exists in our current world. So we have to be able to think educationally about going way, way, way beyond that because that's truly what learners need now, not access
Right.
to recalling
Right.
facts.
We have machines that do that.
Correct. We need
Yeah.
to be able to have them understand concepts and be able to make sense of them in new contexts. And that is a far cry from just remembering Roy G. Biv.
And I do think AI is going to
Oh,
accelerate. I think it'll push more teachers in the direction that you're trying to get them to move
yeah.
to, because they are going to smack in the face be hit with the reality that a computer can now do it just as quickly as you can, disseminate information. So those,
And that's anything and everything. I think about
yeah.
that. Like even content creators. This is a side note of where my brain's at. Like, you create content, but like we have to really get back to like the human doing part because content is there. It's easy to make. We can just ask AI to do it. But like, what does it matter? Like, I think keep asking that question. Why does this matter, and how is it adding value? And then, if you are a content creator, I mean, I'm just thinking about content creators, but like, how can you move the bar with these tools in a different kind of way? That's where my brain's at been late. Like, how do I move the bar and really help people? Because
Well,
if
can we talk
AI
about
can
that
do
for a
it, then
second?
yeah, if you want to
Yeah, because
go down the rabbit hole.
well, no, because I do appreciate that you brought that up because I do obviously follow you on your various social channels and you post a lot of inspirational messages. So, look, where do you find inspiration
Oh, that's a
in
good
your own
question.
life? Yeah.
Yeah, so I often get asked about that because I've been doing it, gosh, like I think it's been like 2 years. I've posted a good morning quote or every morning. I've not missed a morning. And I reflect on the day and people and interactions and I put it together at night before bed. And then in the morning, I'm like, okay, this kind of sounds cool. And I'm kind of a poet. Sometimes I want it to have like alliteration or I want the words to like generate a feeling. And so it's kind of a creative outlet for me. And so I post those and people always know they like it. And sometimes I get messages, hey, that really helped me. I needed to hear that. Like, and that right there is that human, like, That's the reason I think it's sustained. Like, I know that it's helping people. And when you know, like, someone's reflecting back your work to you and you know you're doing good, you want to keep doing it. So I'm motivated to do that. The inspiration behind it, I think, well, two things. One, it's good for me to process. I think that, there are ups and downs, and we're all like, no one's unscathed by, sadness, or, bad things happen. No one goes unscathed. And so we all are human, and we're all kind of struggling and like trying to find our way. And if you go deep on it, like, why are we here? I mean, there's all sorts of humanity. Like, we're all in this together kind of thinking. And so I think just sharing my human disposition of what I'm going through is important. But the other thing is, I don't know what the future holds. And, I have a daughter. She's 6. And I hope that someday, if she's stressed out, I'm imagining her, like, maybe I can't always be there, right? If she needs to hear mom's voice or thinking, like, it's there. It's there as long as servers don't burn up. It's there. Or I have them saved, but I'm actually thinking about putting them in a book, like a little booklet for her. Everyone wants to leave their mark, and how do you leave your mark? And so that's kind of been my outlet. But yeah.
Well, you're
And
certainly,
no,
yeah.
it's not AI. Someone's like, "Why don't you just like, are you tired of doing that?" I'm like, "Not really." And they're like, "I don't know. I would never want AI to do it because AI would get it wrong, because this is my heart."
Well, you're certainly leaving your mark, and fortunately for Iowa and everybody else, you have many, 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 many more years to do so.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
perfect place to end our conversation. And Laura, we really can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing your story and where you find your inspiration and your passion, and how you're making a major difference in the lives of educators and children, not just in Iowa, but everywhere. And we really appreciate that and value the work and your contributions.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to speak with you. And Mark will edit this out if I'm wrong, but I think you're our first guest to reference Sir Ken Robinson. So that made me incredibly happy. So
I have
yes.
like all his books. I love it's so sad. He came to Des Moines and I never got to, like,
Wow.
I can't remember what I had, a conflict. I couldn't go to see him. And
Oh,
then, he passed away, and I was like, that really bums me out because he's like my hero. But yeah.
yes. Well, you're carrying on his legacy in Iowa very nicely. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, you guys.
If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of State of Ed, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon. You can also find us on the web at stateofedpodcast.com, where you'll find links to what we've discussed and access to Laura and her social channels. You can also follow me on Twitter at Marcusix, or at marcusix.com, on YouTube at Edupyro, Edupyro. Be sure to check out Laura's book, The Improvement Game, and while you're at it, check out my book, Captivate, Engaging and Empowering Students in a World of Digital Distractions, available on Amazon. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. It really was a pleasure today.
Thank you.